Welcome to our session 6. To get the full version, the full hour, check out my Patreon. There's a link in the card. So we're on to the detailing phase, and this is actually quite boring. So I've sped this up even more than before. So I compressed an hour down into 5 minutes because there's a lot of just staring at the same thing, turning it around, and then maybe doing one crease or another. And an hour actually went by pretty quickly for me. But if you're sitting there watching the hour, I bet it's pretty dull. So that's why I've sped it up quite a bit. So right now I'm extruding some geometry and expanding it to make it look as if there's muscle underneath the bones, and not that this geometry is just stops at the border of the bone. I want it to look like the bone is on top of this muscle stuff. So I'm expanding the geometry a little bit. Right here I'm putting in the eyeballs. This is where the eyeballs are going to be, and then building up some forms around that. At this point I changed the color of the muscle geometry so I can visually tell the different parts really easily when I turn off ghosting, so I can easily tell what part I want to concentrate on, and visually it looks like it's a nice separation. Of course, when it's 3D printed, it's all going to be the same color, so this is a little bit deceptive, but I don't know. I think it looks really cool for demonstration purposes. So right now I've subdivided to a higher level of detail, and I am sculpting asymmetrically. So this is a lot of Damien's standard brush, which gives you a sharp crease and it looks like a nice cut in. And then building those forms back up with the inflate brush and some clay buildup, and then smoothing it out and stuff like that. So it's a lot of little fiddly details, a lot of fiddly creasing and stuff. I'm not using any references for gums or anything like that. I'm just trying to make forms that look like they're that they would be muscly and lumpy and stuff. It was getting a little too flat, so I used the inflate brush to bring out some of the roundness in those flat planes. I don't want it to lie flat. I want it to have some roundness to it. So I'm using the inflate brush to bring out the roundness, and then the Damien standard brush again to cut in the creases. Yeah, I mean, that's basically all I'm doing here. Damien standard, inflate, clay buildup, rinse and repeat. And during the sculpting process, I was trying to figure out if I wanted to make some custom alphas to get even finer detail like wrinkles and things like that. But then I realized that the size I'm going to be printing it, those details are not necessarily going to show up. So if you manage to take a look at the full hour commentary, you'll hear me moaning about like, oh, maybe I should be making custom alphas to get more details into this stuff. But when I stopped recording, I thought about it. I was like, no, I don't know if that's going to be such a great idea. So yeah, it's at this point where I decided that I wanted to put a little bit more detail, like some creasing and some little distortions and things here and there, and playing with a bunch of different brushes that I have that I've downloaded from other people and things like that. I found this weird crease brush that gives a little bit of a crease around the edges that I thought was pretty interesting. So this part is me just experimenting with different brushes that I don't really use. So if you're not used to using a brush, sometimes it takes a couple passes before you can figure out exactly what it does. Most of my sculpting is done with the Damien standard orb slash and the clay buildup brush. So I use a lot of simple tools. I don't really go for the crazy alphas, but for something like this, I think if you're printing at a bigger size, it makes sense to get into some of the more detailed stuff. All right, so that's pretty much the end of that first detail phase. I'm just taking a look at some different shaders, and here is a final render of what I actually worked on. The green stuff is all the new geometry that I created to make it look like there's muscles in the eye cavities and things like that. All right, so thanks for watching. This was a lot shorter than the other sessions because I spent a lot of time on one feature, and it's not that interesting until you see it all as a whole. So if you want to check out the full hour of this thing, check out my Patreon. The link is in the card up here. And thanks for checking out my stuff, and please subscribe. All right, bye.